All right. Well, here we go. I'm continuing to try this out, and I'm down here in my little basement room doing what I want to be doing, which is commenting on politics and culture, and especially how they relate to my life as a human being, as a all the things I am. And I've noticed, as probably unless you're living under a rock, there's apparently two sides of things, even though I think the sides are fake for the most part. Like there's only one side really, the human side, but it is what it is, and we have a political and cultural situation where people are lining up on sides, and picking sides is a very popular and regular thing to be doing these days. It's divisive, and my goal with this is to uh, try to find more of a common middle. I'm going to comment on this post that came across my Facebook page because it feels pretty relevant in the sense that it's what a lot of people are thinking. And that's one of the great things about social media. It can tell you what a lot of people are thinking. And so this is coming from what is, quote unquote liberal side. I don't know who Dan Walters is. It's not about him. And he's reposting something that Howard apparently posted, and I have no idea if Ron Howard actually posted it, but and I haven't read through this, and that's part of how I want to do it. I don't want to read through and analyze and plan and all that stuff. I just want to take it, raw dogging it. So I'm going to read through the post, comment. I am. If I were to put myself on a side, it would not be the quote unquote liberal side. It would not be the Kamala Harris or Joe Biden side. It would be more Trumpy, but not for so much the person as for the idea. So anyway, enough of that. I'm gonna go through it. We'll see how it goes. And I am streaming this live, I think. I don't know. So it says, Ron Howard has summed up what many of us believe, including me. I'm a liberal. This is apparently Ron Howard saying this, but that doesn't mean what a lot of you apparently think it does. Let's break it down, shall we? Because quite frankly, I'm getting a little tired of being told what I believe and what I stand for. Spoiler alert, not every liberal is the same, though the majority of liberals I know think along roughly these same lines. So that you could just take out liberal and put in conservative, and I think that's what a whole bunch of quote unquote conservative people are saying. I think that the two sides in this first paragraph, they're saying the exact same thing. They both feel the exact same way. I know I don't feel like I'm on that side, but I feel like if I even say a word about how Trump might be good for the country or good for people, I get branded. And I think a lot of people on that side feel the same way. So that's the same. We're the same about that. Number one, I believe a country should take care of its weakest members. A country cannot call itself civilized when its children, disabled, sick, and elderly are neglected, period. So that seems like a statement that most human beings could and would and do agree with. That doesn't seem like a side statement. That seems like, who doesn't agree with that? I think what becomes difficult is the question is the how. How? and the who. So like it would be helpful to get away from some of this rhetoric as if saying this very commonly held belief by most humans is somehow it's being turned into a divisive statement. It's a commonly held belief by most humans, and it's turned into a divisive statement. Another thing is, before Trump came along, we had plenty of children and disabled and sick and elderly who were neglected. Does that mean that we were not civilized? All right, number 2. I believe healthcare is a right, not a privilege. Somehow that's interpreted as I believe Obamacare is the end-all be-all. This is not the case. I'm fully aware that the ACA has problems, that a national healthcare system would require everyone to chip in, and that it's impossible to create one that is devoid of flaws. But I have yet to hear an argument against it that makes let people die because they can't afford healthcare a better alternative. I believe healthcare should be far cheaper than it is, and that everyone should have access to it. And no, I'm not opposed to paying higher taxes in the name of making that happen. I mean, again, I think there's quite a bit in here that a lot of people would agree with. I think one of the foundational differences here in number 2 is that there's a lot of people that do not believe healthcare is a right. They believe it's a privilege. I am one of those people. I have a foundation where I think most of what we have are privileges, and that it's healthy to think of them that way, as privileges. Because, and this is not new conceptually, but if it's a right, then somebody has to execute that right. And that gets to a foundational question of who executes the right. Like, and you have to get as specific as you can about it. Like, specifically who and how do they do that? Are they forced to do that? How are they paid to do that? Or how are they reimbursed? I mean, I'm assuming you don't think that someone should do it for free. And I think if you say, well, the government should do it, the government should just do it, well, that's just a layer in between. Well, how does the government do it then? Well, you should pay more taxes. Okay, well, that's just another layer. So essentially what you believe is that people should be forced to pay for health care to ensure it as a right. Is that what you believe? I would like to know from Dan Walters or from anyone who believes that healthcare is a right. Does that mean that if you don't believe healthcare is a right, you should still be forced to pay for it? Because that's the ultimate question. There are people who don't believe that. And so should those people be forced to pay for it? And I think that's a pretty foundational thing that I would love to hear from people who feel that healthcare is a right, and to see how I'm incorrect about that. I also think that the rhetoric around let people die because they can't afford healthcare, I know that also is kind of like a foundational thing, like maybe part of the answer to, healthcare is a right. And if you don't believe it's a right, then you must believe that it's okay for people to die because they can't afford health care. I don't think that's a strong argument, in the sense that, number one, we do have health care for everyone in a sense. Like, we have Medicaid and Medicare. If you do get hurt on the street, you do get taken to a hospital and you do get seen. Now, healthcare costs are out of control, but the truth of it is people are dying all the time for the decades with some of the most advanced healthcare in the world. And with all this money being spent on it, people are dying all the time. People that can afford health care die all the time. Well, everybody dies. Everybody dies. So I don't really think that rhetoric is helpful. I believe healthcare should be far cheaper than it is. I can totally get on board with that. I think that's what we should be talking about. Why is healthcare so expensive? How does the insurance companies play into this? You know, you go to a doctor, and in my generation now, 55 years old, I remember when it was a doctor. You go to a doctor. You don't go to a doctor anymore. You go to a provider. Who did that? Who did that? Who's made that switch? So now you go to provider, this human being who is supposed to be, are they supposed to be human? Are they supposed to take care of your human body? That, I think, is why people go to medical school, to be the types of humans that take care of other humans that do no harm. So why do we call them providers? I just think that's an indication of how far that we've gone and why healthcare is so expensive. I'm not opposed to paying higher taxes in the name of making that happen. Well, I am. So does that mean I should be forced? That's going to come down to a lot of this stuff is how do you deal with folks that don't agree with you and that don't want to do it the way you do? Number 3, I believe education should be affordable. It doesn't necessarily have to be free, though it works in other countries, so I'm mystified as to why it can't work in the U.S. But at the end of the day, there is no excuse for students graduating college saddled with 5 or 6 figure debt. Who doesn't think education should be affordable? I mean, it's kind of a wishy thing, you know, like I wish for it to be affordable. I remember when I went to college, I chose an in-state school for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons was it was so much cheaper than an out-of-state school. I also had other circumstances around that, but I mean, UVM was $6,000 when I was in that age for somebody who was going to pay, who was an in-state student. It works in other countries. I'm mystified why it can't work in the U.S. Well, I don't think education and teaching children has really anything to do with money, is one reason why. And no excuse for students graduating college saddled with 5 or 6 figure debt. The thing here, I can kind of agree in that sense, but I also think you have to have some responsibility for the students that are choosing that. Like that is a choice that they make, you know. It's not that like they're surprised. I mean, personally, I think it's crazy to do that, and I don't think I would do that if I was college age. And it's probably be good if a lot more college age kids had the discussion about, well, you know what, I'm not doing that. That is a pretty good option to not do it. Number 4, I don't believe your money should be taken from you and given to people who don't want to work. I have literally never encountered anyone who believes this, ever. I just have a massive moral problem with a society where a handful of people can possess the majority of the wealth while there are people literally starving to death, freezing to death, or dying because they can't afford to go to the doctor. Fair wages, lower housing costs, universal health care, affordable education, and the wealthy actually paying their share would go a long way towards alleviating this. Somehow believing that makes me a communist. I don't really know enough in detail about the history of communism, but what I do know tells me that does basically make you a communist, and I don't think that it's useful to say that communism is bad necessarily. I think we have to be able to have these discussions without making things bad before we even start to discuss it. I think that most of the people, I agree with this first couple sentences. who believes that your money should be taken from you and given to people who don't want to work? Well, you can extend that. Does he believe that money should be taken from you and given to people who need it for healthcare? How do you determine that? Or is it just people who don't want to work? And what about people who get hurt at work? Or what about people who lose their jobs? I have been on unemployment before for a number of reasons. I'm grateful for it. I've also contributed to unemployment for my entire working life, as have my employers, as have I when I was an employer. Does that make it right or wrong? I don't know. But I think it's something that is and can be useful, but I don't think it's generally done the right way. And I have a massive moral problem with a society where a handful of people can possess the majority of the wealth. I mean, the fact that he has a massive moral problem, it might be a massive moral problem, but it doesn't mean that those people who possess that wealth are bad people. And it's a problem. It's a problem to make them bad, to make wealth bad, to make people who have made ungodly amounts of money. And there's a lot to get into with this, and I won't get into it all here, but the advancement of technology to allow, computer code to be monetized so that it can expand, in ways that was never thought of before and generate just ungodly amounts of money for people. They didn't plan on that. They didn't plan on that money being generated, but that's the way it is. That's the way it is. And so whether you have a moral problem with it or not, it doesn't mean that you alienate or make bad the people who have been successful in that way. That's a problem. This problem of one side dehumanizing, villainizing another side or one group doing that's a problem. And I think that we should work hard to not do that so that we can have a discussion that is not threatening to people. Because we have to be able to have a discussion that's not threatening to people about this reality that the way the world works, there's a bunch of pixels that are called money that just grow and grow and grow exponentially in ways that were never anticipated, and what that means, and what that means to our community, and what that means to our society. We need to have a discussion about that. And I think the discussion is really like, all right, should we do communism? Should we do capitalism? Should we do socialism? What about all these isms? Should we do these things? And what happens if you don't want to do them? That's the key. What happens if you don't want to do them? How do we treat each other? Number 5, I don't throw around I'm willing to pay higher taxes lightly. If I'm suggesting something that involves paying more, well, it's because I'm fine with paying my share, as long as it's actually going to something besides lining corporate pockets or bombing other countries while Americans die without health care. I agree. I don't necessarily agree that I'm good paying higher taxes, but I'm good with the concept of it going to something valuable and something that's in line with my values. And bombing other countries is not in line with my values. And I don't know how many Americans align with those values. Defending my country is part of that, but I don't necessarily have confidence that that's what we've been doing for the last 50 years or so or more. Americans die with health care and Americans die without health care. I believe companies should be required to pay their employees a decent, livable wage. Somehow this is always interpreted as me wanting burger flippers to be able to afford a penthouse apartment and a Mercedes. What it actually means is that no one should have to work 3 full-time jobs just to keep their head above water. Restaurant servers should not have to rely on tips. Multi-billion-dollar companies should not have employees on food stamps. Workers shouldn't have to work themselves into the ground just to barely make ends meet. And a minimum wage should be enough for someone to work 40 hours and live. I agree with most of that philosophically. It's a crazy system that we're in right now, and that people, myself included, that you have to work the way that you have to work and beg and borrow and steal and go crazy to just pay mortgage, rent, pay to live. That is not how I think a human is designed to flourish. And what happens is people don't have a chance to pay attention to anything around them because they're so busy and so tired doing their life. This could just be me, but I've decided to make some changes, so I am paying attention. But the other side of that is I'm not working as much. So thank God for unemployment. So I agree with that in concept, but foundationally, it's the same question as healthcare. Is he saying, Ron Howard, are you saying that who requires the companies to pay? So he is basically saying, it seems to me, that the company is not a independent organization, that essentially it is a branch of the government, because I'm assuming the government would force them to pay the wage that the government sets. And that is a foundationally different, oppositional concept to the concept that we have now. So that's basically communism versus capitalism. And we should talk about that rather than making it so rhetorical. I wish that, I think that, I believe that. Okay, listen, I think what he's saying is the government should be in charge. The independent companies shouldn't be in charge. The government should be in charge. Is this what you believe, if you believe in what he's saying? And if so, let's talk about that. Number 7, I'm not anti-Christian. I have no desire to stop Christians from being Christians, to close churches, to ban the Bible, to forbid prayer in schools, etc. By the way, prayer in school is not illegal. Compulsory prayer in school is and should be illegal. All I ask is that Christians recognize my right to live according to my beliefs. When I get pissed off that a politician is trying to legislate scripture into law, I'm not offended by Christianity. I'm offended that you're trying to force me to live by your religion's rules. You know how you get really upset at the thought of Muslims imposing Sharia law on you? That's how I feel about Christians trying to impose biblical law on me. Be a Christian, do your thing, just don't force it on me or mine. So this seems like a door open to really get into everything that's been said before. So in this point number 7, Ron Howard apparently doesn't want to be forced because he has different beliefs. So is that consistent, or is he being hypocritical? Does he want to force people who don't believe that healthcare is a human right to pay? Do you, if you're listening to this, do you believe in some cases force is okay against someone else's belief, but in other cases force is not okay? That's a big thing to talk about, because that's what he's saying here. He doesn't want to be forced based on his beliefs. Well, neither do I. So is that okay? Number 8, I don't believe LGBT people should have more rights than you. I just believe that they should have the same rights as you. I think this is a strange one, because I really don't think that the rights come from the government. And I understand, I'm not trying to cop out here. I'm not trying to cop out because I know there's discrimination. And I know that that's not good and that that's not what we want. But it is a problem, I think, that no matter what type of person you are or what your beliefs are, if you're begging an authority to give you your rights, then you're barking up the wrong tree. And so we have to discuss, I think, what are human rights separate and apart from the government authority. LGBT people have all the rights that they have as humans. And if they're being discriminated against by a government, why does the government have that type of power? Because if the government discriminates against them, it discriminates against others. And then we're all in that same boat of being beggars for our rights. So that is the conversation we should be having. Why have we all given up our rights to this authority that we're looking to, tell us that we're human? This is a better discussion. Let's talk about that. Number 9, I don't believe illegal immigrants should come to America and have the world at their feet, especially since this isn't what they do. Spoiler, undocumented immigrants are ineligible for all those programs they're supposed to be abusing, and if they're stealing your job, it's because your employer is hiring illegally. I believe there are far more humane ways to handle undocumented immigration than our current practices. That's probably true. And I think we want to be a humane country. And I think the question is, how can we be a humane country? I don't think a lot of people on either quote unquote side think that we shouldn't be a humane country. I think the question and the discussion revolves around how, just like with healthcare. How do we do it? Who does it? And how does it get done? How do we be humane? Some people think it's humane to have stricter policies, to have more adherence to the law of immigration and the law of the country, and that it's actually more humane to have that. And unfortunately, that comes with pain. That comes with the pain of some people who decided to not follow the law for whatever reason. It comes with the pain of them experiencing detained children, splitting up families, and being deported. And I think that sucks. But I think it's not accurate to say that there's not pain on both sides. There's pain on both sides of that equation. There's pain on not having it done well, not having it done legally. And I think what the discussion needs to be here to build a bridge is, how do we do it? What's step number 1? If you want to have a humane country, what is the first thing that you do? Okay, you think about it. It's your country. You have a country. It's like a little pretend country, just like my little room down here. I got my own little room. I can do whatever I want with it. How would I make this little room the most humane room? What's the first thing I would do? What if I had a bunch of people knocking at the door to come in? Because the room's so great. Or the room's better than their room. So think about it. What would you do? What's the first thing you would do? We'll have that discussion. Number 11, I believe our current administration is fascist, not because I dislike them or because I can't get over an election, but because I've spent too many years reading and learning about the Third Reich to miss the similarities. Not because any administration I dislike must be Nazis, but because things are actually mirroring an authoritarian and fascist regimes of the past. I don't really know. That's an argument that I see a lot. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. So maybe I would just ask people who really believe that to detail out more arguments, because basically what he says is it's fascist, and because he's read a lot of books. What is being mirrored specifically? What is being mirrored specifically? Because here's the setup for this, folks that are on the other side of this, or that believe what in this. The setup is that if you don't believe that the Trump administration is fascist, it means you're a Nazi. And that's a hard one. That is not a foundation for a bridge. So as long as that talking point keeps getting pounded and pounded, it's going to be tough in a lot of ways to come to the table and figure this out, because what do you do with Nazis? You destroy them. So that's basically what me and any of the other 75 million people who happen to vote here. And really the response has been, well, yeah, no, you are a Nazi. And it's like, Jesus, that's so amazingly inhumane to say that, to take that position. And I think that position covers a whole bunch of fear about evaluating your own position and having an adult, mature conversation about things. Number 12, I believe the systemic racism and misogyny in our society is much worse than many people think and desperately needs to be addressed, which means those with privilege, white, straight, male, economic, etc., need to start listening, even if you don't like what you're hearing, so we can start dismantling everything that's causing people to be marginalized. I think this to me is, for my neighbors and people who I work next to and work with and play with and all this stuff, this is crazy to me. It's really crazy time. He says 3 or 4 points above, he doesn't want to be forced based on his belief. But he basically says here, I'm going to force you. And if you don't agree with me, then you are racist, misogynistic, and privileged in a bad way. It's not a way to have, again, a humane, mature, adult conversation. It's just a complete abnegation of the responsibility of someone who actually wants to get into this. You don't just say that. You don't just say that stuff and then claim to be the superior person because you say that stuff. Honestly, and I think a lot of people feel the way I feel about this, just like a lot of people feel how he feels about this. When I see that quote, it makes me think that he is an actual racist, misogynist, and privileged white, straight, economically rewarded male. It makes me really think that the person saying these things are those things that they're saying. I'm going to talk about this more, I think. But the point is, we have a Constitution, a Bill of Rights, and a justice system. Our American culture is the greatest privilege that's ever been bestowed on any people. The traditions that we have created around living together as a culture and society and as different cultures has never been done before. And the fact that we're trying to work through it is the reality. The fact that we have this privilege to be able to work through is a reality. And then the way that I see it is there's Ron Howard and folks who believe this tearing down everything because why? There's a lot of people that don't agree with what he's saying or how he's saying it. And it is possible to come together with different cultures. Black culture, white culture, Asian culture, Mexican culture, all these different cultures under the roof of American culture, born from tragedy and heroism, with the greatest documents for humans living together with different beliefs that have ever been created in the world. We have that. That is our privilege, everybody's privilege. I'm not interested in coming after your blessed guns, nor is anyone serving in government. What I am interested in is the enforcement of present laws and enacting new common sense gun regulations. Get another opinion, put it on your page, not mine. Well, I mean, for the most part, I agree personally with that. But, honestly, people are afraid of the government. And honestly, I can see that. And not that anyone's going to be able to go out and buy a tank or an F-15, but people are legitimately afraid that there's going to be police or some authoritative group showing up to their door with guns, and they don't want to not have guns. That's part of our history. I totally agree with common sense gun laws. I think that makes a lot of sense, but there's a lot of rhetoric around this, and I think that you have to respect the people who own guns responsibly and who believe in that right. I believe in so-called political correctness. I prefer to think it's social politeness. If I call you Chuck and you say you're preferred to be called Charles, I'll call you Charles. It's the polite thing to do. Not because everyone is a delicate snowflake, but because, as Maya Angelou put it, when we know better, we do better. When someone tells you that a term or phrase is more accurate, less hurtful than the one you're using, you know better. So why not do better? How does it hurt you to not hurt another person? So this to me makes my blood boil a little bit, because again, and to those on that side of things that think that's the argument, I just don't agree with that argument. It's not that most people don't want to behave that way. It's that most people don't want to be forced to behave that way. And so here is Ron Howard acting basically like Uncle Sam in the Kendrick Lamar Super Bowl halftime show, telling people how they're supposed to be polite. And people want to say fuck you to that, and there's nothing wrong with that. If someone doesn't want to be polite in society, there's plenty of natural consequences that discourage that behavior. But the bottom line is, again, is he saying, and is what my friends who believe in this, is what you are saying, that you should be forced to address people a certain way? And if the answer is no, then what is the argument? Why not just leave it alone? Number 15, I believe in funding sustainable energy, including offering education to people currently working in coal or oil so they can change jobs. There are too many sustainable options available for us to continue with coal and oil. Sorry, billionaires. Maybe try investing in something else. See, this makes me think that this is just bait. Probably I'm just wasting my time here. I don't know, but it's so snarky. It's so boring and cliched. It just makes me immediately tune out. Sorry, billionaires, try investing in something else. Oil has powered every advancement in human civilization since the dawn of time. No gratitude. No, not that you have to be sitting there worshiping oil, but just the lack of awareness around how we've even arrived at where we are is really staggering with this type of commenting. Like, who doesn't want sustainable energy if it can work? And I think a lot of people would support that. But look at him being so condescending to people who don't think like he does. You know, it's just crazy. It's crazy to me. Why would anybody think that this type of attitude would be conducive to changing anyone's mind? Number 16, I believe that a woman should not be treated as a separate class of human. They should be paid the same as men who do the same work, should have the same rights as men, should be free from abuse. Why on earth shouldn't they be? It's, again, I think a setup of a question. As if you have any comment on this question. So let me ask if there's anyone that's watching this. Hopefully there's at least one person that's going to watch this. But if you believe this, and then I say anything that is not 100% in lockstep with this, what do you think of me? If I think that there's concepts in here that really are important to be picked apart and broken down, like the foundational concept that men and women are different from each other, and that's the first principle of this, that men and women are different, and so therefore they will not get the same outcomes. That doesn't mean they shouldn't or should. It just means they won't. And so if I start to say something like that, am I immediately a why on earth shouldn't they be person who doesn't like women or who thinks women are second-class citizens? I'd like to know. I think that about covers it. Bottom line is that I'm a liberal because I think we should take care of each other. That doesn't mean you should work 8 hours a week so that your lazy neighbor can get all your money. It just means don't believe there is any scenario in which preventable suffering is an acceptable outcome as long as money is saved. So the bottom line is that liberals are the ones who think that you should take care of each other. So no one else can think that we should take care of each other. It's just, this is the underlying undercurrent of what I see to be the rhetoric from this side of things, whether it's Ron Howard or, a lot of people that I know who are good people, caring people, but who come at the approach of this stuff from this ivory tower that just lends itself to the folks that don't agree with any number of things to just putting up walls and not getting to the things that we all share. The things that, when I think about my community, the things that people care about, which is children and families and health. Everyone around me wants basically the same things. So how is it that we are so divided by this? And maybe it's not how is it that we're so divided. Maybe it's that, okay, we are so divided, and so now we have to do some work to figure out how it's not really true. We're not actually divided. And maybe this whole Trump thing, this whole progression of our culture, this whole questioning, this whole attacking, maybe this is what's necessary to get there. I hope it is. I think it is. I think we can get there because I think we are neighbors, and I think that we do believe and we do want the same things. And personally, I think that we should get the government as much out of our lives as possible and as many levels as possible. Remove the government tendrils from the way that it's integrated itself in our life. And let us be neighbors without being criminals because there's a law about everything. Let us be neighbors in our communities, and let us do our best to take care of the things that we believe in our communities, that we share value on, and let us figure out how to do this together. Uncomfortable? Yeah. Who wants to do it? Nobody. But yeah, we do want to do it because it's better than the alternative. I'm here for it. I'm here for it in my little room. All right? I'm here for it in my little room. All right? So if I see you out there, let's talk. And if I don't see you out there, let's talk. All right. Thanks.